thou art a ghost that hath come from the earth, or a phantom of night that hath no heart, or one that lieth dead in the desert, or a ghost unburied, or a demon, or a ghoul, whatever thou be, until thou art removed, thou shalt find here no water to drink. Thou shalt not stretch forth thy hand to our own. Into our house enter thou not. Through our fence break through thou not. We are protected, though we may be frightened. Our life you may not steal, though we may be scared to death.
Welcome to Scared to Death, Creeps, Peepers, Roberts, and Annabelles. I'm Dan.
Hello, Dan. I'm Lynze.
Hello.
Hello.
Very quick, happy Father's Day and a very late happy Memorial Day. I am the worst when it comes to tracking holidays and remembering how they line up with episodes.
I know. I map out the whole year, and I should really just like plug it into something, but I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So happy days.
All the days of happiness to you and your loved ones.
And thank you so much to all the new listeners who have found us on Spotify recently. A huge thanks to the people at Spotify Podcasts for giving us 2 different editorial selections this past month. We got an episode of Scared to Death and an episode of Nightmare Fuel selected, and it has definitely brought us quite a few new listeners. So thank you.
Yeah, and welcome to our little spoopy world.
Yeah, I hope you stick around.
Stay with us.
And how many stories do you have today, Lulu?
Well,
and you also have a book in your hand.
I have several things I need to say before I tell you about my stories. One, huge thanks to our fans, John and Priscilla, who sent us some crazy water.
From Mineral Springs?
From Mineral Wells, Texas.
Mineral Wells.
And I poured myself a glass of the level 4 crazy, which means it has the most amount of trace minerals in it. And it's thick.
Oh, oof, thick water. That sounds appetizing.
It's the only way I know how to explain it. Like, I definitely am like,
Who doesn't want some thick water?
I mean, it's not that thick. It's just like, it's not light. I don't know how to explain it. But by the end of this episode, I'm going to be healed of all that ails me.
Okay.
And then huge thanks to our friend and just a longtime creator, Jim Harold, over at Jim Harold's Campfire. Also a Cleveland guy, so we love him. But he sent us his volume 6 book of his Campfire series. And Jim has been at paranormal podcasting longer than anyone.
Yeah.
Since 2005.
Pioneer.
He is. And he is a lovely, lovely human. So if you are looking for another show, if you're looking for something to read, anything that Jim Harold puts out, I would endorse. Just a good guy.
Yeah.
And then I have 2 stories.
Okay.
So my first story is going to take us to Alaska. We are going to do some urban exploring at the Buckner building in Alaska.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Not familiar with the Buckner building.
Well, you're going to learn.
Okay.
It's a weird place, a city inside of a building, like a movie theater and just like everything.
Just a big complex.
A doctor.
Huh.
Yes. Strange.
All right.
And then my second story will explore the possibility of potentially bringing on your own attachments when we explore haunted places. Are we putting ourselves at risk of bringing things back with us?
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that a few times in the past. Yeah.
Literally never.
Okay. So I have 2 stories as well. Excited to share who submitted the second story at the end of the episode.
Oh, uh-huh.
And we're using an additional researcher this summer that we've known for quite a while. And they found
somebody familiar to us.
They found a creepy legend from just outside of Bergen, Norway, revolving around the ghost of a young boy.
Of course they did.
Revolving around the case of a young boy who died tragically with his father on a frozen lake a century ago. But before that, we're going to head to Sasebo, Japan, to cover the legend of the Red Room.
Ooh, red rum?
Nope, not like that. A computer virus of sorts that doesn't just infect your computer, it kills you.
Oh.
Yeah, so once you're socked up and feeling good and protected, I will get started.
Well, okay, hold on, wait. Let's do it this way. And now I think you can read my socks, which say, hate will fucking lose, which
that's cool.
I do agree with wholeheartedly.
Okay, a little bit of disturbing true crime setup on this first story before I dive into the paranormal elements of it. On June 1st, 2004, in the city of Sasebo in the Nagasaki prefecture of Japan, an 11-year-old girl, Natsumi Tsuji, murdered her 12-year-old classmate, Satomi Matarai, in an empty classroom during their lunch period at Akubu Elementary School.
The fuck?
Yeah, this is terrible. Natsumi, wielding a box cutter
Ooh.
that has a literal razor for a blade, a tool also known as a utility knife, sliced Satomi's arms as she tried to defend herself from the vicious, terrifying attack, and then Natsumi sliced her classmate's throat. After Satomi quickly bled out and died, Natsumi calmly walked to her next class, covered in Satomi's blood. Meanwhile, a teacher who noticed that Satomi was missing went looking for her, stumbled upon her body, and called the police. When Natsumi was arrested, she quickly confessed to the murder, only saying, "I'm sorry," when first asked why she did it. Questioned at the police station, she claimed that she killed Satomi because she had been bullied by the girl, called a goody-goody and fatty by Satomi online. But does that seem like the kind of relentless bullying that would lead to murder? Pressing further, investigators learned that Natsumi had become obsessed with something that seemed to speak to her true murderous motivation, the Red Room. When investigators searched Natsumi's computer, they found that she had bookmarked a web page for the simple Flash animation and that she had visited and watched it often. And what is this Red Room animation? Well, it's a creepy 8-minute Adobe Flash animation that tells the story of a boy who has stumbled across something called the Red Room on his computer at home after hearing from a classmate about the cursed animation that causes you to die a terrible bloody death. The boy frantically keeps trying to close down and exit the pop-up, cutting off a question it keeps asking in a Japanese girl's voice. Do you like? But every time he closes out the program, it just pops back up. Over and over. Do you like? He closes it out. It asks again. It asks again and again. Until finally it asks the full question. Do you like the Red Room? The screen now turns red and displays a list of names in black text. The boy sees his name at the end of the list, freaks out, calls his friend from school to tell him what has happened to him. The next morning, the boy is found dead in his room, a room whose walls are covered in his blood that poured out of his slit wrists and then out of his slit throat as well. His death is recorded as a suicide, but his classmate knows the truth and worries that the Red Room will pop up on his computer and come for him next. According to this legend, or at least this version of it, there are many variations. Anyone who sees this Red Room animation will either die and be found covered in their own blood that is also splashed all over the walls of the room they die in, or they will have to murder someone else and cover the walls in their victim's blood to keep from dying themselves, as Natsumi allegedly did with the murder of her classmate, Satomi Miturai, according to some online paranormal speculation. Shortly after Satomi's death, this Flash animation was allegedly taken off of the internet, but it can now be found in at least one YouTube video that I watched. Natsumi was sentenced to a psychiatric institution where some sources say she was released after 2 years, others say she was released after 4 years, and still others say she remains there to this day. It's believed that she had her name changed, so we can't find out for certain what's become of her. Ever since Satomi's murder, the Red Room has been rumored to have randomly appeared on the screens of additional victims. In each case, someone was reportedly surfing the web, typically looking at illicit content, when the red pop-up appeared on the screen. The pop-up displays the red filtered image of a door, soon accompanied by spelling out a question in black text against the red background, "Do you like?" A child voiceovers this question at the same time you see the text. Try as you might, you can't close the window for long, it just keeps reappearing, no ad blocker can stop it. The Red Room reappears on your screen over and over, repeating that question, "Do you like? Do you like?" Some say that even if you unplug your computer, the screen will remain unnaturally on, and the animated pop-up will continue reappearing until it's played out to its horrifying conclusion, eventually asking, "Do you like the Red Room?" And once that happens, the door opens. Now you are in the Red Room, your entire screen turns blood red, and a long list of names written in black text appears. Scrolling to the end of the list, you will find your name. And now, unless you kill someone, by the next morning, you will be dead, and your blood will be painting the walls of your room red. A ghost or demon appearing as a woman in either a red or white dress is said to appear to slash you. Unlike most cursed objects, which you can destroy or give away or treat to some kind of cleansing ritual, according to the legend of the Red Room, there is no way to avoid the curse being carried out once that red pop-up window first appears on your screen. Your fate has been sealed. There is no escaping. Is this nothing more than an old internet urban legend, or is there something real here to fear? The following person claims that this urban legend is all too true. This account was originally written in Japanese. Time now for the tale of the Red Room. It is not my real name, but I will call myself Tetsuya to share my story. The names of everyone else have been changed as well. The locations and events I will be describing, they are all real to the best of my memory. I'm in my 30s and have lived in Kumamoto on the island of Kyushu, Japan for my whole life. For many years, while still living in a medium-sized apartment with my parents, I worked for Hirata in a factory making custom robotics equipment. I had many coworkers, and I became friends with several. For a few months, I became closest with a man named Kenji. Kenji also grew up in Kumamoto and was the same age as me, but we had never met prior to working at Hirata. We became friends after realizing that we both loved anime. Our favorite show was Psycho Pass. We started to recommend other new shows to each other, such as The Testament of Sister New Devil and High School of the Dead. We would grab dinner together and talk about a new anime show or manga book we had found. We would sometimes have drinks at a club, flirt with girls, or watch a movie. Normal things like that. Kenji also lived with his parents. We both talked often of our hopes for the future. Getting promotions, making more money, getting places of our own. But then I started to date a girl, Aiko. Naturally, Kenji and I stopped spending as much time together as we used to. Kenji seemed to withdraw now in a bad way. I think I may have been his only real friend. He became more obsessed with anime and manga, watching many shows and reading many books, so many I could not keep up. He also started to talk about some very sexual anime he found on some adult websites. And then later, he started to talk about even more extreme anime he found on the dark web. I told him to be careful, that he was playing with fire, that the dark web is full of illegal websites. He could click on the wrong one and get into big trouble. He did not listen. Kenji began to look more and more tired at work. He did not look well. He was not getting enough sleep. He was losing weight and always seemed distracted. He would watch anime on his breaks, or even at his station when he should have been working. At lunch, he was more interested in showing you some new show he had found than he was in talking with you about anything in your real life. I worried for him. I told him he was spending too much time on his computer and his phone, that it was not healthy. Again, he did not listen. One day, he desperately wanted me to come to his house so he could show me something new he had found, something he said he could not show me at work. He said it was too extreme. I was nervous, but also curious, and I felt sorry for him. At this point, we had not spent time together outside of work in months. No one at work was meeting up with him anymore. He had become strange. I agreed to visit him one night after work. I was going to bring Aiko, but he said he would be too embarrassed to show me in front of her. I believed he was only going to show me something sexual, but it was more than that. After eating dinner with Aiko, I drove to Kenji's house. I greeted his parents, and then we went to his room. There he showed me the most extreme animation I have ever seen. It was still done in the anime style, but very graphic in its violence and sex. Very dark. Some of the characters looked very young as well. It made me uncomfortable. I told Kenji that I no longer wanted to watch. I was disturbed. I told him that he should not watch either. We got into a bit of a fight. When we argued, an animated pop-up appeared on his computer screen of a flashing red door. It played very creepy music, like music from a horror movie. A question appeared on the door. It asked, "Do you like?" We also heard a girl's voice ask the question at the same time, "Do you like?" Kenji thought it must be a virus, and he closed the pop-up. But a moment later, it was back. Again, we heard the girl's voice ask, "Do you like?" Again, he closed the pop-up. This happened several more times. I told him to restart his computer. He did. But then before opening any programs, it appeared again. The red flashing door. The question on the screen. The girl's voice asking, "Do you like?" I told Kenji that his computer would need to be taken somewhere for repair. That is what can happen to you when you look at dangerous websites. He began to grow very angry. Over and over, he closed the pop-up. Over and over, it returned. "Do you like?" He changed his security settings. He searched his hard drive for new files that had been installed. He used his security software to search for viruses. None of this helped. He could not get rid of the pop-up. We kept sitting there, trying to think of something new to attempt. He kept closing the ad, growing more angry. Then it changed. Now the girl asked, "Do you like the red room?" The door opened. The music changed and became more threatening. A list of names appeared on the screen. Kenji scrolled down to the bottom, and we both saw his name written there. He grew worried. How did this pop-up know who he was? He thought maybe someone would try to blackmail him, threaten to send a message to his boss or to his parents that revealed what perverted and demented websites he had been visiting. I grew a bit worried as well. Was someone recording him watching these things with the camera on his computer? Was I also recorded? Would I also be seen as guilty? I needed to leave. Then the true terror began. When I told Kenji I must go, the lights turned off in his room. And when they turned back on, I saw a ghost. She was standing behind Kenji. She was a young woman in a white dress covered in what looked like blood. She held a knife with what looked like blood on that also. She had a horrible look on her face. The lights turned back off and then on again. She was gone. I told Kenji what I saw, but he did not believe me. He thought I was only upset because I was worried about getting into trouble for watching what he showed me. He told me that his parents' house had been having electrical trouble. An electrician was coming in a few days. It was nothing to worry about. It was nothing scary. Again, I told him I must leave. I could not take it anymore. I did not think what happened was natural at all. I was scared. Before I made it to Aiki's apartment, Kenji was already sending strange messages to my phone. I still have them. Tetsuya, I saw her. The woman in white with blood all over. She appeared in my room again. What should I do? I told him to pour salt near his computer. Scatter more around his room. That was all I could think of. My grandmother once told me that salt can rid a space of evil, unclean spirits. I also told him he would need to talk to a Shinto priest. Until he could do so, I recommended he should leave his room. Kenji asked if he could come over to my place, but I told him that would not be possible. I was spending the night with Aiko. I must admit I also did not want him near me. I did not want him to bring that spirit to me. He soon sent a more disturbing message. She came back. She talked to me. If I do not kill someone, if I do not cover the walls in their blood, she will kill me, Tetsuya. She will cover the walls in my blood. Someone must die in the red room tonight. What do I do? What he said troubled me. I told him to tell his parents what was happening, to show them his computer. Maybe they would know how to stop this. He said that he would not risk getting them involved in the mess he had made. He worried that if this ghost saw his parents, she would want to hurt them also. I told him he should unplug his computer and throw it away, that he should leave his home for the night, stay in a hotel. He wrote back to say he could not be alone like that, not when he was so full of terror. I wrote that I did not know how else to help him, that I needed to get some sleep. Maybe everything would be better in the morning. I am ashamed to say that after I said that I turned off my phone, it was all too much. I did not want to explain to Aiko why Kenji continued to message me when it was so late. By this time, I had made it to Aiko's apartment. I did not read any more messages until the following morning when I woke up. I waited until I had left Aiko's place and made it to work. I am glad she never had to see my terror. I sat in my car and read what Kenji wrote in the parking lot. Tetsuya, she keeps coming back. I unplugged my computer, but it is still on. That is not possible. Something bad is going to happen to me. Tetsuya, she is staring at me now. She is not going away. She is standing in front of the door and she will not let me leave. The next message was a video. He sounded very scared as he spoke. Look, there she is. Do you see her? She stands by my door. She will not let me leave. But there was no one in the video. Not the woman I saw. The woman I know he could still see could not be recorded directly like this, I guess. The next two messages he sent were also videos. In the first video, Kenji has recorded himself. He looks like he has gone mad. He speaks too calmly now. He says, "She is coming for me soon. Thank you for being my friend. You were right. I should have never visited those websites. My fate has been sealed." The last video is the worst. It is the one that haunts me. I erased it that same morning, but I will never forget what I saw. Kenji is not holding the camera. He is being filmed by someone else. He is dead. He sits on the chair in front of his computer. His arms have been cut. So has his neck. He is covered in blood. There is blood on the walls. It is everywhere. I have never seen so much blood. After a few seconds, the camera moves and faces a window. Just for a moment, you can see the reflection of who is holding the phone. The woman in the white dress. The woman from the red room. Her reflection was able to be captured. And then the video ends. The police would question me because Kenji messaged me last before he died. They said it was a suicide. The last video he sent me did not show up in his phone, the one filmed by the ghost, the one I erased. I have been nervous since that day. I'm afraid to use a computer, but I cannot manage a life without one. Every day I wonder, will today be the day I see it? Will today be the day that the red room comes for me? I have read about other people who claim to have their friends or relatives die in this same way. People on their computers who saw the door, who heard the questions. Do you like the red room? Once it asks, your fate is sealed. Once the red room picks you, there is no escape. One way or another, there will be blood on the walls.
Yikes. That's creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's creepy urban legend.
Uh-huh. Or maybe not so. Mm-hmm. Maybe not just a legend.
Yeah, I only have 2 pictures.
Okay.
The first is, this is just what the Red Room pop-up is said to look like. Question written here in Japanese.
I would be super screwed if that popped up on my screen because I don't know what that says.
Yeah, I would not either.
I'd be like, oh, okay, whatever.
And then this next picture, just a creepy image of the Red Room that shows up on several articles about the legend. I don't think it's not tied to the original Flash animation.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, I guess, don't go looking for porn on...
Yeah.
Right, because that's what it originates from.
Well, not necessarily porn. It just says in like the sources, illicit websites.
Mm-hmm.
Like when people are looking at stuff that, I don't know. I mean, illicit's a little bit subjective, but things they probably should not be looking at.
Right.
Is increases the odds according to the legend of this pop-up showing up on your computer.
I mean, it does feel like outside of porn.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to like not have people see that you're looking at?
True. I don't really know on the web. I'm sure there's other things. I mean, like, I don't know, execution videos, like those snuff films or something.
Ugh. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That helps my brain. But also just the like, do you like like that feels sexual.
Yeah. True.
So it and based on not Kyoto, the one guy, but like
Tetsuya.
No, the other guy, the guy that dies.
Kenji.
Kenji, thank you.
Yeah.
He is showing Tetsuya with that guy. More and more like sexually graphic material.
Yeah.
So it does seem to lend itself
that's what happened to him,
that.
According to the story.
Oh, okay. What? Not that you have this answer, but what would happen if you just like put like a blanket over your computer? What if you stopped looking at it? What if you didn't scroll down? Like you see this like listed names. It's like, what if you just don't see your name? I mean,
I don't know.
I have a lot of questions about that. And then I'm just curious, like the girl in the red dress. I wonder if
the white dress with the blood.
White dress with the blood. Yeah, I wonder if she's the originator. Like if somehow it's from her. Like she died by suicide, and now, or maybe was like forced into murdering herself. Some weird situation where now she wants other people to suffer in the way that she suffered.
Yeah, I don't know. I will say,
what is the motivation here?
I was just talking to somebody about this recently, but like Korea, Japan, I'm sure like elsewhere, but like especially in those 2 countries, like their horror lore or horror folklore heavy on young women. It is around the world, like that, like the woman in the white dress. I mean, that comes from like all over, like Western Europe, Mexico, all different kinds of places, the U.S. But there's a lot of like angry young female entities in Japanese and Korean horror.
I mean, I get it.
Long black hair, pale skin, and just like pretty vicious.
Yeah, they're pretty frustrated by life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I get it. It's hard to be a woman. That's really, really weird.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is one of those stories where I'm not scared right now.
Yeah.
But I just imagine myself like, surfing the web for like a new dinner recipe. And then there's always pop-ups.
Looking at those illicit dinner recipes.
Yep. That's why I was something completely innocuous. And then just like some red pop-up. Ugh.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that's going to like freak you out when you least expect it. When you're driving and your kid's like, hey, what should we have for dinner or whatever? And you're like, I don't know, let me Google what's around it. Just, we use our computers and our phones all the time. So I just have this like really uncomfortable feeling that at some point, it's going to come back to me when I least expect it.
Oh yeah, at the height of this legend back in like 2004, 2005.
When I was just a wee baby. Yeah.
After sadly like that young girl, was murdered.
That's insane. That's almost more terrifying to me than the legend.
Oh yeah. But at the height of that, it's like, oh man, if you really wanted to cause a lot of mayhem, if you then released a virus that mirrored this Red Room thing, and just, can you imagine, like, as you're hearing about this and this real crime is in the news, and then that shit does show up on your computer, it's like, I bet if that happened, there would be people just like immediately throwing their computers away. Yeah.
We just like go back and we look, and there's just been like a plummet in like those years of stock of like
or actually be a huge boost in computer sales.
Oh, because people were throwing them away and buying new ones.
Yeah.
I was thinking like I would just get rid of it and be like, well. I immediately, when he said, and I can't live a life without a computer, I was like, I mean, you can.
Tough though. If you're working in tech, it sounds like he was.
Yeah, well, maybe it's time for a career change.
Yeah, really change your life heavily.
Maybe now you work with your hands in a different way. Maybe now you are like a construction worker.
True. Yeah, just
do something else.
Some little village just doing woodworking, something.
Yeah. Okay, take me to Norway.
Okay. So a little bit of historical setup on this one before we get into the main spooky Norwegian story. The gloomy Eastdalen Valley outside of Bergen, Norway, has long been the origin of stories of death and misery. In medieval times, as Bergen prospered with the trade that came from a German Hanseatic League office that opened in the fjord, the valley began to grow its dark reputation. The valley's Lake Svartediket, these are some tough words, Lake Svartediket supplied drinking water to the city, and the dike the dike that allowed the lake's water to be collected would soon be used by unsuccessful journeymen to commit suicide instead of reporting their failures to their merchant bosses. For centuries, journeymen and other victims of the melancholy that had always plagued those who lived far enough into the north for the sun to abandon one with painfully short days for much of the long winter would use the lake's dike to jump to their deaths. Adding to the valley's dark reputation, the evil midwife, Slugestein Matcha, a traditional folk legend of Bergen, was said to take unwanted newborns from the city for a shilling or two each and then drown them in the valley's deep cold lake.
Yikes.
Then, half a century ago in 1970, the valley's reputation became even further associated with the macabre. Reports of a mysterious unexplained death were published in papers all across Europe. The discovery of the badly burned body of the Eastdal woman led to the valley receiving a lot of unwanted attention from large publications like the BBC. A BBC article on the case describes how someone had cut the labels off her clothes and scraped distinctive marks off of her belongings, as if to stop her from being identified. Adding to the mystery of her identity, the investigation revealed the woman had used a series of disguises and fake passports, and even now today, her identity remains unknown. True crime fans continue to be fascinated with this odd case to this day. It was confusingly dismissed as a suicide, even though she was still alive when she was burned. In light of new medical technology, this case was recently reopened by Norwegian police in 2017 and is now being treated as a homicide. And if this was a true crime show, we could spend so much more time talking about this fascinating disappearance case, but it doesn't seem to have any paranormal elements. The most terrifying story to come out of the Eastdalen Valley occurred decades before the case of the Eastdal woman. It's definitely not the most publicized story to come from the valley, but perhaps it should be. It is difficult to find a full telling of this tale, at least in English. It seems to survive mostly in bits and pieces, referenced in other stories as opposed to being shared on its own. The following is the most comprehensive version of the events that we were able to construct. Time now for the tale of the winter screams of Norway's Death Valley. Most Eastdalen locals, it seems, have historically ignored what they seem to think are nothing more than superstitions. Tall tales told by residents of Bergen who fear much of the cold, unforgiving wilderness that surrounds them. As this gruesome and tragic story goes, a father and his 6-year-old son from the valley had gone out ice fishing one winter day in the early 1900s, surely caring little of the reputation of the valley, already gaining the nickname of Death Valley. And their ill-fated trip would soon add to this valley's lore. The trip started out as expected. The day was cloudy like almost every other in the valley, and signs of a storm were showing, but it looked like it would not come for some time. The pair apparently had a very successful day. The fish were fat and biting, and they spent far longer on the ice than they originally planned, filling up their buckets entirely with brown trout. Once they were finished, they packed up their gear and left the hole to return to the shore. Due partially to their bountiful harvest, the father carried much more than he normally would have. Also, according to neighborhood kids, the son had hurt his ankle the previous day and couldn't put much weight on it. Likely because of these two factors, an injury and a heavier load, the pair attempted to take a more direct route back home. The father likely thought little of this posing any danger to him and his son, having spent much of his life out on the lake. But the combination of the extra weight and the new route resulted in an unbelievably heart-wrenching disaster. The ice was far thinner than anyone would have expected it to be along this new route. And with the gathering storm growing more powerful and drawing near, the father likely could not hear the ice beneath him start to crack. The doomed pair had only made it approximately 50 feet from the fishing hole when the ice suddenly broke, and the father quickly disappeared beneath the unforgiving cold water's surface, taking his buckets of fish with him. From his son's perspective, one moment he was there, and the next, he had completely disappeared. His son, of course, began to panic, barely stopping himself from running towards where his father had fallen and disappearing into the ice-cold water as well. Unfortunately, this sad story does not end here. It doesn't stop with his son screaming and crying and waiting in vain for his father to resurface before eventually, reluctantly, accepting that his father is dead and retreating home. No, much more misfortune is still in store. This father and his young son were both experienced with life in the cold, and this experience would unfortunately backfire and send the son to his early grave as well. After a split second of panic, the boy cleverly moved between the spot where his father had fallen in and the fishing hole. While the ice was too broken up for the father to climb back in where he had fallen, he was able to spot his son's figure through the ice and incredibly follow him back to the fishing hole. There he popped his head out, gasping for air, and father and son, I'm sure, shared a moment of joyful celebration over a crisis averted. However, after attempting to climb out of the hole, the father had to face a new grim reality. The ice was too thick, the hole was too small, and he was too weak from the cold and the exertion of making it back to the fishing hole to push his shoulders through. He likely knew as well that if he asked his son to hastily bang away at the ice to increase the size of the hole, he might open a new crack in the ice and fall in as well. And if he cried out to attract the attention of someone from the shore, their added weight would risk his son's life. So, with classic Norwegian stoicism, he seemed to quickly accept that there was nothing he could do. He looked up at his still hopeful son, not thinking of how to help himself in his final moments, only thinking of how to help the boy. Even as he struggled to keep his head above the icy water, he thought of how to make his son feel safe. With the last of his fading energy, the father spoke to his son in a voice barely louder than a whisper. "It will be okay, son. Just hold me until I fall asleep. Then you will carefully walk to the shore. Then go to our neighbor's house to tell them what has happened. Promise me you'll do this." The boy wanted to refuse, but he looked into his father's pained eyes and knew there was no other choice. He kissed his father on the head as he was unable to even give him a final hug. The boy then waited in the cold, feeling the wind of the approaching storm whip across the exposed skin of his face, crying without being able to wipe his tears. All the father could do was watch. Every time the boy's father began to close his eyes, the boy would shake him, scream at him, until he opened them again. Desperate to touch his father one last time, the boy also foolishly removed his mittens, and soon his exposed hands were nearly as cold as his father's body. Eventually, the father closed his eyes and would never open them again. He was dead. The boy, after much screaming and yelling, accepted that his father had gone and began to follow his instructions. He started to rise, to leave, but then panic set in. His bare hands had frozen to his father's head. What happened next is hard to stomach. A gruesome scene unfolded, one that no one should ever have to witness. In a frantic effort to save himself, the boy yanked and ripped his father's head from side to side, cutting into his face and neck on the ice's edge as he did so. For a few moments, he did not even notice the deep gashes his struggle was making, but as soon as he did, it only increased his terror. The boy wailed a terrifying, piercing wail as he realized he was stuck holding his father's icy, and now bloody and mangled, head. He continued screaming throughout the night as the storm engulfed him, his cries drowned out by the howling winter winds. The next morning, 2 forest workers were walking along a path near the edge of the lake. One commented on the loud, howling winds of the previous night and thought he noticed something out on the ice. He pointed it out to the other worker, and as they looked more closely, they realized it was a person. They quickly moved along the ice towards the figure and soon saw that it was a small boy. After reaching the boy, the first worker screamed out when he realized the boy's hands were frozen to what sure appeared to be a man's mangled head. Making the scene that much more horrifying, crows had picked out his father's eyes. The father and son before him were seemingly both frozen solid, mummified by the cold, but then, to both the relief and terror of the 2 forest workers, the boy's head turned slowly towards them. He was somehow, impossibly, still alive. The nearest worker collapsed onto the ground, holding the frozen boy tightly, attempting to warm him up. The second worker then got to work trying in vain to separate the boy's frozen hands from his father's frozen head so they could take him to a hospital. He knew the boy would lose both his hands and possibly most of his arms, but he thought they might be able to save his life. While he tried to warm the boy's hands enough to separate them from his father, the boy recounted his story to them. The workers would later describe the boy's panicked explanation, saying that he mainly wanted them to know that the gashes on the neck were not intentional. He didn't want anyone to think he had ever intended to harm his father. And then, seemingly satisfied that the men believed him, the boy closed his eyes and was dead. And now both men left for Bergen to alert the authorities, and then this sad story takes a very strange twist. The doctor who came from the city to examine the pair's frozen bodies declared that what the workers had claimed simply could not be true. The boy could not have ever spoken with them, for he had most certainly been dead for many hours before the workers ever found him. The workers' reported experience was chalked up to trauma, and the tragic accident was barely spoken of after this, out of respect for the father and son's family. Whether the workers still believed in what they saw or not, they seemingly refused to speak of it to almost anyone who asked, perhaps embarrassed, perhaps afraid of appearing to sensationalize such a dreadful tragedy. A funeral was of course held for the father and son, and although the people of Bergen certainly gossiped about the report of a dead boy coming back to life to share his story, the residents of the East Dalen Valley overall remained very tight-lipped about the affair for decades after. The ghost of that boy, however, hasn't allegedly been so quiet. He still reportedly maintains a presence in the Death Valley. A few years ago, a true crime fan that traveled to the valley in search of the previously mentioned Eastall woman recounted a terrifying story. I've always been a bit of a true crime nerd, and for whatever reason, the story of the unexplained death of the Eastall woman had long been my favorite. Bergen is very close to my home in Germany, so after years of putting it off, I finally decided it was worth it to visit the site of the suicide that had to have been a murder. I originally planned on traveling to Bergen in the fall, but had a few things come up and get in the way, and wasn't able to head north until early December. I had never heard any paranormal stories about the valley, as my love for true crime had never really translated to ghost stories or other supernatural happenings and folktales. Only having time for a short weekend trip, I left for Bergen on a midday flight. I arrived in my hotel in the afternoon, dropped off my bags, bundled up, and after asking the front desk for hiking directions, set off. They warned me of a winter storm that night, but being quite experienced with the cold, I was not deterred and decided I would not waste the trip over a simple storm, especially as I was returning home the next morning. The hike took a bit longer than I had planned, but I still made it to the site where the Eastall woman's body was found just before dark. I'll be honest, it was slightly underwhelming. I wouldn't recommend it to any other true crime enthusiasts. It adds basically nothing to what you can easily see online with photographs and videos. I poked around for 15 to 20 minutes, and then, a little annoyed at myself for arrogantly actually thinking I might find something that could help solve the mystery of this woman's identity and what really happened to her, I began to walk back. Along the way back into town, I made it to a section of a trail close to the edge of Lake Svartediket when the wind began to howl. I'm normally pretty hard to spook, but the howling sound of this wind was particularly eerie. As it blew harder and colder, I noticed that I wasn't just hearing the howling of the wind any longer. It sounded like someone was screaming as well. As I now basically ran along the path, the screeching sound grew louder and louder still, and it sounded quite unnatural. Had I thought some living person was in trouble, I certainly would have looked for them. I would have done what I could to help, but this was different. The screaming had a haunted quality to it, and it was far too loud for any person to make. It got so bad I had to stop and plug my ears. Then as I looked around, I thought I saw the figure of a small child out on the lake. I called out to them just to be certain they were not the source of the frightening sound, and they turned to me. I saw what looked like a small boy with his mouth wide open in anguish, and he was holding something. He was holding what looked like a man's frozen, eyeless head in his hands. I literally fell backwards in horror, screamed, and turned to sprint as fast as I could back along the path. Luckily, I made it back to the city without getting lost, and I ignored many weird glances as I jogged back to my hotel. Breathless, I tried to explain to the man at the front desk what had happened. Instead of reacting with alarm, he nodded knowingly and told me the century-old story of a father and son's fishing trip that had gone horribly, horribly wrong. I've never believed in ghosts, but I did not sleep well that night at all. I returned home the next morning, and I took this story with me. It has haunted me for years now. I hope that after sharing it, I'll perhaps be able to leave it behind. I want to never hear that boy's screeches again, or see him holding on to his dead father's head.
Oh my God.
Isn't that a crazy story?
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, I'm never going ice fishing with you. Like, if I thought maybe I was going to, I'm definitely not now.
That scene, it's so sad.
It's so sad. And it just like, lends itself to this thing of like, sometimes we find ourselves in really terrible situations.
Yeah.
And it is a life or death thing where you have to do something really, really awful to save yourself.
Yeah, or save someone else.
Well, he didn't save anybody.
Well, but in an attempt to save his son, he
the dad. I was thinking about the boy. I was thinking about the dad.
Yeah, I was thinking from the dad's words like that.
Fuck the dad. Just kidding.
I only have.
I was like tearing up.
Yeah,
it's really heavy,
intense scene.
Yeah.
Here's a few pictures. A forensic sketch of the Eastall woman. This really is like a huge case.
Now this is also wildly fascinating.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information about this. I mean, all kinds of speculation of who she was and tied to like politicians and like crazy conspiracies. It's like a huge true crime, like mystery case in Europe.
Wow, it is always baffling. I just don't think about it. Like, we have so many of those kinds of stories here. You forget that there's millions of people all around the world and other communities, and they have their own stories.
Yeah.
Just a never-ending amount of unsolved mysteries.
Yeah, I think the BBC did a multi-part thing about this a few years ago, and maybe more stuff. There's still hope that they can figure out her identity and connect. And then once they know her identity, figure out who actually killed her. Yeah,
they started to say, like, you were reading it, and you said like they carved out something like on her belongings or whatever. They cut out the tags on her clothing.
Yeah.
And then there was something else. But what I thought you were going to, I started to have like a very visceral reaction because I thought you were going to say they started to like carve off identifying marks on her body. I was like, huh! Just kidding.
Yeah, but it was weird. She had checked into a bunch of places before her death, or they think the woman who this woman ended up being, they don't know who she was.
Yeah.
But the woman they think whose body they was is some woman who like checked in and out of a lot of hotels in the weeks leading up to her death.
So maybe on the run?
And under aliases. Yeah, they think either on the run or possibly like high-end sex worker connected to maybe some politicians, or like somebody wanted her to go away. Yeah, it's like there's all kinds of speculation. So that's her. And then the next picture, no scary pictures associated with the urban legend, but here is Lake Svartediket in Death Valley outside of Bergen.
Norway is so incredibly beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is.
Oh, Bergen, you haven't been there, but it's so pretty. So pretty. Just like really brightly colored fishing village.
Cool. Yeah.
Really, really.
And the second biggest city in Norway, so like a decent size for over there. Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I was in like a mall in another country that I was like, this is weird. This is a weird mall. Like when we think of mall, we just think of like Hot Topic and Banana Republic, or, whatever, all these like generic big box stores. And not that they don't have their own version of it, but it was like it sort of like spiraled, and you could like see all the different levels, and it was more terraced, and grocery store, like more a matter of convenience as opposed to a push for people to just come spend their afternoon buying shit they don't need.
Yeah, I bet it would be like bank, grocery store, like maybe like pharmacy, like because it's so cold in the winter.
Yeah.
It's just a place you can go walk around and do all your necessity kind of shopping as well as like frivolous shopping if you want to.
And do you know what I first discovered in Norway, in Bergen, Norway specifically?
Soft serve ice cream.
Softest.
Softest.
Is it softest?
I think it is softest.
Oh my God.
So good.
It's like the best ice cream you could ever get in your life. I swear I would. Oh, what I wouldn't give for some of that right now.
I know.
And you can't get it here. It's great. They won't sell the recipe. They won't export it. And I love that. I love when places are like, nope, you can only get it here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
normally don't care about soft serve ice cream, but that stuff is incredible.
It is incredible. Yeah. It's like really, really creamy. And then they roll it in, like you can get it rolled in like a cocoa dust.
Yeah.
Or sprinkles. Sprinkles are a bit much. I like a crunchy thing, and it's even a little bit too much for me. And then there was like a pink like strawberry powder or something.
Yeah.
Kind of like Pop Rocks, but it didn't pop.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so good. I want ice cream real bad right now. That was great. That
Thanks.
was great. That was a really creepy story.
Mm-hmm.
Really, a big emotional roller coaster on that story.
Yeah.
And also, okay, so then, sorry, just going backwards for a second. So those two forest workers then, they definitely saw a ghost then, because they
right. They said the kid couldn't have been alive.
Yeah. That's a weird detail because they had not a ghost. It couldn't have been a ghost because they had a body to take back.
There are variations of this story, like with all these older stories.
Sure.
And there's actually a more macabre one. That's another one where it's like it's not as paranormal in the original. Like there's a couple variations of how they found the boy and the dad.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the variations include the screaming.
Okay.
And basically like now, and the legend of like now when there's a storm on this lake, people think they can hear the screaming of like a child or of somebody and see like a little boy on the lake.
Uh-huh.
But one of the other ones, I don't know that he does Oh, no. That's right. It's like, it was similar. He does tell them the story. That's right. Never mind. He does tell them the story. But because his hands are frozen to the head.
Yeah.
There were forest workers, like the guys walking by, and they had an axe.
Stop it.
And they chopped his arms off to try, because his arms were frozen solid. So they chopped those and then tried to carry his, like, the rest of his body back to the doctor. And then he died.
That actually has a little bit more credence for me.
But
I was more probable.
I chose to go with the other one because I'm like, I didn't want like people to get hung up on the. If I'm listening, I feel like I would get hung up on the. Jesus Christ! You just fucking chopped his arms off with an axe, and it could lead to like more questions in my head. Like, well, then did they think that you killed the boy, or all kinds of stuff? Would it lead to problems? So I was like, eh.
I did for a minute wonder when you were saying that like his hand got stuck to his dad's head, and then you said it took a darker twist. I was not initially expecting him to, decapitate his father in an attempt to save his own hand. I was thinking that he was going to look for some other, an axe, something else, since they were back at the fishing hole, and that he was going to have to chop off his own hand.
Oh yeah, but if he didn't have both hands connected, yeah. And actually, on that axe one, that did remind me though, in that version, which maybe is the more legit version of what somebody would do to try and save him. Mm-hmm. Not only did they cut his arms off, the kids, because he couldn't like.
Yeah.
I want to say they maybe first, before they did that, they tried to cut the dad's head off too. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So gruesome.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, you ready to sit back, relax, and go to Alaska?
I am.
Okay.
Another cool place. I do.
Layla. Layla. Okay. So we are going to explore the Buckner building in Alaska. Huh. I just started listening at the recommendation of a coworker, and I started from the very beginning, so I'm not sure if you still do this segment. Well, lucky for you.
We do, and you have an awesome coworker.
And so just one note about this. I prepped the story, I saved it, and then I came back to read it again. And when I came back, the story, it was so bizarre. It was all messed up. Like words were... I've never had this happen. And I'm working on one document, and it only happened to this story. Huh. So there's 2 stories on this document that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And I had prepped it, saved it, closed the document, and then came back to it days later. And all of the words were like, if the word was should, the S was removed, and then it was HO space ULD, and then the S was at the end over here. And every 5th word-ish was like that. So it took me hours to fix it. I'm like, this... It felt...
It's haunted.
Well, the story is very creepy.
Yeah.
And I was like, did I somehow... it was just so random and only happened on this portion of the document.
Yeah.
Something about it felt very paranormal to me.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that. All right. In the small town of Whittier, Alaska, long abandoned military building, the Buckner building, still stands. My teenage friends and I used to drive out there to explore the Buckner building. Or at least that is until our last visit creeped us out so much we didn't ever go back. The Buckner building was part of a pair of buildings nicknamed the City Under One Roof. The other building is still in use today, but this one was abandoned sometime after the '64 earthquake. The Buckner building was 6 floors above ground with 2 basement levels. It contained a garage, movie theater, jail, shops, restaurants, apartments, a hotel, a radio station, a bowling alley, hospital, gym, and so many more things, with multiple tunnels around it to various parts of town, such as a tunnel to the shipping docks and a tunnel that led out into the mountains next to it. I was obsessed with this building as a kid. I always loved the history of it and exploring it. Every single time we went to the Buckner building, someone would eventually be overcome with a feeling of heavy sadness that shifted into a creepy, unsettling energy. The last time our group of explorers went there, we brought someone with us that hadn't previously been there. Within 10 minutes of arriving, she was so creeped out, she went back to the car to wait for us. Eventually, one of the guys in our group also left, saying that he felt like something or someone was watching us. And then a little while after that, another guy left our group, saying he wanted to check on our friends, leaving just 5 of us to explore. We were exploring the elevator control room when I grew quite bored. I ditched the group and went down to the next floor to poke around. Nothing exciting happened, so I made my way back to my friends, but they were somehow gone. The stairs I had just used were the only way in and out of the elevator room. The stairs only went down to the floor where I had been because rubble blocked the stairs from going down any further. The only way my friends could have left was to cross the floor I'd been on and then walk right past me. I double-backed and checked for them again, but they weren't there. I went back and forth, calling out to them before going outside to wait for them. Eventually, I heard them inside the building calling out to me. I headed back inside to reconnect with them. They said they had been in the elevator room the whole time before coming downstairs to meet up with me. They had been looking for me just as I had been looking for them. They said they hadn't seen me on the floor where I was exploring on my own, but they knew I wouldn't have left alone or without letting them know where I was going. They'd been calling out to me for some time before deciding to wait by the stairs for me. None of this made any sense. We would have seen and or heard each other at some point. It was like I was invisible to them and vice versa. I was so freaked out that I couldn't be in that building any longer. Losing my friends while seemingly in the same room as them creeped me out way too much. When I arrived back at the car, the girl who had been the first one to bail didn't want to talk to anyone. The second guy that had left said he couldn't find his way back into the building. He had wanted to continue to investigate with us. He kept going to various access points we frequently used, but when he arrived at any of them, he couldn't get inside. And the third person that had ditched out said he felt something grab him. We found a handprint on his shoulder that did not match anyone that was with us. We decided it was time to go. On the way back to town, my then boyfriend, who didn't believe in the paranormal like at all, kept saying he felt as though something had been behind him, wrapping its arms around him. He had horrible nightmares for weeks after that. Later, while reviewing the photos we had all taken, we argued over whether or not we saw shadow figures or if it was simply a trick of the light or something else unexplainable. But there was one photo that we all agreed creeped us out. When we were in the basement level, it was too dark to see anything, even with our headlamps and our heavy-duty flashlights. One of the girls had stood in place, slowly turning, all while snapping photos of the entire room with her flash on. She'd take 2 photos, then turn slightly, take 2 more photos, turn slightly, and she did this until she had gone in a complete circle. Each photo within the pairs would have been taken just mere seconds apart. We're still not sure what we saw in those photos. All we know is that it wasn't in the first photo taken, but was in the exact same spot in the photo taken seconds later. We're all in our 30s now and continue to talk about this. No matter how many times we've tried to come up with a reasonable explanation, we just can't. So I have this photo.
Okay.
Now, before we dive into the photos, I have just some photos of the building just to kind of like wrap your head around the whole story.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of interesting. Okay. So the first photo we have is this is what the Buckner building looked like.
Oh, wow. Really
back
big.
then.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so much bigger than I thought. Really long, not super tall, and then butts up to the mountains, essentially.
And you happen to just, I don't have a map obviously in front of me, but like Whittier, do you know if it's close to any city?
You know what? I feel like I did know.
Is
Maybe
it somewhere
it's
close to Anchorage?
Oh, man. You know what? I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I want to say that in my research, the reason it was built is because of its proximity to waters that didn't freeze. There's some sort of like port here.
Uh-huh.
And something like having to do with like war, shipping of goods, and this building gave them like a way to be safe. I can't remember the specifics anymore, but it was really.
Looks like it's pretty close to Anchorage.
Okay. Thoughts. Thanks, Logan. Yeah. So that's okay. Cool. Okay.
Yep. And then our next photo is what the building looks like now. Okay, so if you went today, it's like dirty and dark because it's not in use anymore. Just, and you can very much see the shipping port.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so then our next photo comes from, it's an exterior photo and it comes from Adam Elliott, and he posted these pictures on Adam's picture blog. Yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of interesting. And then, this one comes from Abandoned Spaces. These next two come from Adam Elliott. Okay. So this is just a creepy hallway. And it's hard to,
hallway.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, but there's water pooling on the floor.
Where that green is?
Yeah, and if you kind of just look at like the door.
Yeah, it's like algae and stuff.
Exactly. And then this photo cracked me up. This next photo, it's from the movie theater that existed in the building.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so but like a proper movie theater with those velvet covered seats. I mean, it's all nasty now.
This reminds me of, what was it, Ghost Island, Japan? Remember that story I had where it was like this little island, it was like, and it was like mining, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to mine somehow on the island, which is why anybody was there.
Right.
And it was like a company town, but they had like all this stuff, grocery store, all just crammed into this space to like entice people to want to work and live there.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of that where, you know, at the time, maybe, I don't know how close, you know, miles-wise it is from Anchorage, but maybe like when this thing was going, it was a bit of a hike there or whatever. So when you're in this town, you're not going to like pop over in the evenings to Anchorage to grab a meal.
Right.
You're just going to be, and it's not even really a town. It's just like this port with not much there. And they probably just built up this huge complex to encourage people to want to be there, to get people to actually go and work there. Where it's like, yeah, you know, it's like you're not going to have a ton of amenities as far as like a big town.
Yeah.
But we get this cool space where you can have the movies. There's a gym. There's the salon. You can get all this stuff. It's all indoors when it's cold in the winter. And I mean, that would be kind of cool.
It would be interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, before we put up this final photo, a reminder that this is a photo that was taken on this like urban exploration.
Yeah.
And the girl who took it, she would take like 2 photos, like 1, 2, really quick, and then just, you know, slightly twist her body to make a complete circle. And so everyone knows that she's taking photos, meaning like no one's jumping in front of the camera.
Okay.
Okay. So go ahead, Logan. So you see those fucking eyes?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. And Logan has a zoomed in photo of this. Isn't that fucking terrifying? Oh God. It freaks me out so much.
Little creature, or could it be a raccoon or a cat?
Well, it's up awfully high, and what would it be on top of?
I don't know. It's in
and
the
also,
space
you don't
there.
see the body. Like you just see like
There's a second one.
A second one.
Look to the right. Okay, there's the obvious one.
Oh, up there?
Up there. Is that also 2 little lights?
I don't know. But if you just remember in the story that the person shares, they're saying like, we were all together. So this means, this is what I take away.
Yeah.
They said, even with our headlamps and our flashlights, we couldn't see anything. So they had light. It wasn't like they were just...
So yeah, if there's a raccoon, they would be like, there's a raccoon.
And probably would have heard it, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Didn't hear, didn't see. And then this person is just taking these photos. So I imagine it's like everyone's kind of standing behind the photographer as she makes her little circle.
Yeah. It's creepy.
When I was like, so when I read the story, I was like, okay, creepy old building. And then I saw the photo and I was like, oh my God, I'm so freaked out. And I could not look at this when I was adding it to like how we put, I was just doing like a lot of like my hands over my eyes and like.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And so we don't have any answers for you. We don't know what it is either.
Okay.
Yeah. Good, huh?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
That photo is good and creepy.
What a cool place to explore. I would also want to go in that place and just check it out, just like to see what used to be.
Well, and there's a second building. So there's 2 buildings like this, and the first one is still in use, which is even more fascinating.
Oh, so they still got some kind of industry going there.
Buckner building was part of a pair of buildings named the City Under One Roof.
The City Under Roof.
Yeah, and one is still in use today, but the other one was abandoned after the 64 earthquake.
Yeah, so, that was a huge earthquake. And actually, when I was a little kid, one of the few things I did with my dad's parents, with Grandpa Bill and Grandma Carol, I spent a week with them in Cordova, Alaska, this little town a ways from Anchorage, probably not too far from Whittier and all this, but they drove me out to this area where the earthquake had just like rippled the road and just like destroyed this little bridge. But it was just crazy where it's like the road looked like, reminded me of like the ocean, like waves. Just like these massive, like undulating ripples in asphalt. Like it just mashed the ground up so severely.
Crazy. Crazy that like you were able to see that remember that since you were only like what, like 2 or 3 when you went to see that? It happened in 64?
No, I didn't see it in 64. I saw it in the 80s.
I thought you were much older than that. Do my old man jokes get old?
Nah, it's fine.
They're so silly. Okay. One more tale?
Yeah.
All right. So this, just a reminder, this story is kind of exploring like, are we exposing ourselves to possible attachments when we go exploring abandoned places?
Okay.
Hey, Dan and Lynze. If you feel like circling back to spine-tingling tales of ghosts in Oregon, well, then I have a story for you that I rarely tell anyone. My senior year of high school, my friends and I explored several places rumored to be haunted. There's a very small town in Oregon called Lafayette that's a short drive from where I grew up. My buddy Jeff told me a rumor about a woman who was accused of being a witch and then was hung in the cemetery above Lafayette sometime during the 19th century. Supposedly, on a night with a full moon, you could see her hanging from a tree on the hill overlooking the town and hear her moaning or possibly laughing. Legend has it is she cursed the townspeople for murdering her, claiming vengefully it would burn to the ground 3 times, and it has indeed caught fire several times since then. Perfect place for a group of devil-may-care amateur ghost hunters like ourselves to investigate. I picked up my high school buddies and my parents' hand-me-down Buick LeSabre, and the 5 of us made the journey to Lafayette. On the way, we talked excitedly about what lay ahead, pumping each other up with ideas about all the scary scenarios that might unfold. The MapQuest page Jeff had printed out only gave us the slightest problems finding it driving up the hill to the cemetery. I turned the headlights off and let my eyes adjust to the dark so no one would spot us cruising past the rows of headstones and call the cops for trespassing. Once I found a suitable place to park, we hopped out and immediately began locating all the trees on the hill. Some of the guys didn't stray far from the road, but I walked confidently amongst the graves. My grandfather owned a home only a couple hundred feet from a cemetery, and all through my childhood, my sisters, cousins, and I had played hide-and-go-seek there. This place didn't seem all that much different. Unfortunately, the moon was partially obscured by clouds, and serious doubt began to set in. Did it have to be a full moon to see the hanging woman? In a last-ditch effort, we split up to visit as many trees as we could, hoping one of us would find the witch. We came up empty-handed. Disappointed at our failure to walk away without so much as a scary story, we piled back into the dark blue sedan and began our trip home. On the way back, we listened to Queens of the Stone Age and talked about finding another haunted place to explore the following week, one that was legitimately spooky. Once the lights of our hometown came into view, something very unexpected happened. Nick, who was in the back seat directly behind me, asked that I drop him off first. No, I told him. You live right down the street from me. Jeff lives all the way on the other side of town. I'll drop you off on my way home. Nick responded flatly. No, you're taking me home first. I paused, and then as I tried to reply, Nick cut me off abruptly. Take me home first. There was an edge in his voice. Why? Nick's voice jumped up an octave and he blurted out, because there's something in this car with us and it's around you and I want to go home. Nobody said anything, but I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Nick wasn't one to exaggerate, and I'd rarely seen him lose control like this. It was puzzling because I felt fine. No hairs on the back of my neck, no nefarious ghostly presence circling me. I dropped Nick off first, and then one by one, stop by stop, my friends exited the car and walked into their homes. I asked Jeff if he'd seen anything around me before he closed the passenger door, and he just laughed and shook his head no. Finally, I arrived back at my parents' house. Our home was built in 1905, so at this time, approximately 100 years old, and I can only guess what happened in that house before my family moved in. What I do know is that I had several vivid, recurring dreams in that place, both good and bad. The worst nightmares always ended in the same place, the basement. In every dream there, I died. I'd get the overwhelming feeling that something predatory lurked in the dark corners, watching me. It would wait until my back was turned to it, so right at that moment, I spun around to face it. All I would see is a hand reach out, grab me, and pull me helplessly into the shadows with it. None of those thoughts came to mind, though, as I quietly slid my key into the lock of the back door and made my way up to my room on the second story, softly closing the door behind me. With another day of high school ahead of me, I did my usual routine of brushing my teeth and setting my alarm before crawling into bed and dropping off into sleep. Adam! A woman quietly whispered my name across the blank dark oblivion of dreamless slumber. I ignored it. Adam! Her whisper was a little bit louder, but I again ignored it. Adam! 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 The disembodied voice rapidly repeated my name over and over, growing shriller until she screamed hysterically in my ear, Wake up! I sprang up in bed, gasping. My room felt like an ice cave, and I had to squint my eyes against the light to see the bedside clock. 4:15 a.m. Wait, What was that light? My eyes adjusted, and what I saw sucked the air out of my lungs. An amber beam from the streetlight outside our house was streaming through my window. Only I'd been dropping the blinds on that window ever since I got over my fear of the dark at 10 years old. How were they up? I don't sleepwalk. Shivering, I crawled from my bed and flicked the switch on the ceiling light. Sure enough, the blinds were up, and like all the way up. Tight, too, like somebody had pulled the string angrily. There, in the middle of the window, was a spot of fog, as big as a hand, you know, the kind you see when somebody breathes onto a car window in the winter. I grabbed a shirt and wiped it off, and sure enough, it disappeared. Okay, everything seemed normal. Still unable to comprehend the raised blinds, I opened my door and crossed the hall to the bathroom, where I splashed handfuls of water onto my face. The bathroom was the coldest part of the second floor, and yet it was somehow warmer than usual. I walked back to my room, took a few steps through the door, and stopped in my tracks. The spot on the window had returned, and with it, a sense of foreboding and terror which had always been confined to the domain of the basement. It quickly placed itself between me and the only way out, the doorway behind me. I desperately wanted to run away, but I couldn't, because I knew this game. I'd played it before in those nightmares, except in those terrible dreams, I always lost. Slowly, I placed one foot behind the other and slid backwards a step. I could still feel it behind me. Don't turn around, don't turn around, don't turn around, I whispered to myself over and over. If I didn't look at it, it couldn't have me. Step by step, little by little, it gave way to me as I walked backwards out of my room and across the hall into the bathroom. Countless minutes of shaking with fear and adrenaline passed as I crouched in the bathtub, watching the locked door handle intently to see if it would follow me. My parents were devout Christians with strong beliefs in the spiritual world. I'd parted from those beliefs years earlier, confident that in the absence of God, I could find most answers scientifically. So what do you do when the threads of reason and logic you rely upon to rationalize life can't tie a knot around something as slippery and elusive as an interaction with an unseen force? Well, if you're stubborn like me, you keep looking for answers. The next day at school, I waited for Nick in the hallway after class. He must have seen my bloodshot eyes and exhaustion because his face went pale immediately when he saw me. "Nick, what did you see last night in the car around me?" I asked. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. As he brushed past me, he muttered cryptically under his breath, "A dark halo." And we never spoke of it again. There's little more of the myth of the witch. According to some online sources, it was actually a man named Richard Marple. In 1850, he was sentenced for the violent murder of a shopkeeper in Lafayette and was summarily executed. At his hanging, his mother, Anna Marple, was the one who cursed the town to burn down 3 times. Did Anna Marple follow me home that night? I don't think I'll ever know for sure, but I do know that whatever it was, it came from that cemetery on that hill.
Yeah.
Ha, da, da.
Cemetery on the hill. I haven't been to a little spooky cemetery in a while.
You just go across the street.
Yeah, that's not an intensely spooky cemetery though.
I think at night it was.
Yeah, probably would be pretty good.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of trees around it, so I think you would get a lot of shadows.
I think the one across town would be better, where it's like
Which one?
It's over off of Northwest.
By Target?
No, kind of by Northwest Boulevard. Back there, God, it's like in a weird little wedge where if you took 95 south to like go over the river, like before you get there, it's like it's hard to explain.
I can't even think of where it is.
Behind Kootenai Hospital, kind of like back in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
A little ways, and then further south. It's not on a road you would ever go. It doesn't lead anywhere other than just to houses.
Got it.
Pure, but it's like a big cemetery.
Is it on government?
I don't know what the street is over there. Maybe, might be.
Maybe.
Bless you. But it's a very, very big one. Like the biggest one in town by far.
Okay. Yep. That's That's the one on government. And what I think is weird about that one too is that if you go up northwest, like by Cafe Carambola and take that side street, there's also like a part. It's separated by a road. It's almost like there's 2 cemeteries. I know there's just one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the smaller of the 2, creepy.
Yeah, you can tell there was a huge cemetery there. I would guess they put the road in after the cemetery was maybe already there.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, we have to, town's growing. We got to like be able to drive through here.
Sorry, we got to move some bodies around.
Move some graves.
That's never a good sign.
When they talk about having a recurring nightmare in this one, it made me think, have you ever had a recurring nightmare? Like truly like the same nightmare that just keeps showing up?
I've been having it my entire life.
What is it again?
I hate it. It's about fucking elephants. It seems not scary, like when I start to explain it, but the sense of like fear and dread, I'll be sound asleep in my dream, and then I wake up to like the banging sound of like somebody like at our back door.
Okay.
And it's always takes place in my childhood home. Even now as an adult, it still takes me back to this like 6682 Crenshaw Drive, Parma Heights, Ohio. It takes me back there immediately, with such clarity. And there's a giant, scary elephant, like what is it in Winnie the Pooh? Heffalumps. It's like a creepy ass fucking elephant. And there's always somebody riding it, like directing it, but I can never tell who it is.
Yeah.
And it chases me. Like through my childhood house, and then it will like bust out of the house, and then I generally wake up.
It's been a long time, but you have told me about this. But it's been a long time. You're still having this.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had it in like a couple years, but it is like so. It when you say recurring, it's not recurring as in every night or every month,
but
it's
a dream you've had multiple times.
Yes, and I have found that like when I was super stressed about things, it would come back more. But now when I'm super stressed, well. Thank you, weed gummies.
Yeah.
I have a recurring dream.
I was just going to ask you,
I've had I think it's like late high school, probably very early college.
Yeah.
I would all of a sudden, just out of the blue, remember, oh shit, I'm in a class that I've completely missed this entire semester. And I've realized I'm like way behind on my grades, and there's only like 3 weeks left, and I'll still have that today. Like
really?
I just completely forgot of this obligation of going to class, and I'm going to fail it.
Okay, when that happens now, like as an adult, do you find, Logan, that you've forgotten to do something else? Like you forgot to get a card for, Kate's birthday, or like you forgot to is it related to anything?
I'm pretty forgetful all the time. Even this morning, Dan, like I put my keys on Dan's desk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like absent-minded.
Yeah. Probably just more when I'm stressed. I bet it pops up.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have a...
No,
you're not a big dreamer to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I had that one when I was a little kid about the clown, but it was like recurring in the sense that I had it multiple times in a very short span of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. It's been so long ago, but I would guess over like a few weeks, had it a couple times.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like there's never been a dream that I had when I was like a kid, little kid, then I had it again as a teen, then I had it again in my 20s. There's never been a repeat dream that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't know if my elephants will come back, but as a kid, I remember being so scared. Like I've tried to like dissect it, like, okay, what was happening? But like it happened when my parents were married, when my parents were divorced. Like it wasn't around a traumatic event that it would come back. Yeah, it's peculiar.
Because that in and of itself just would be strange. Like, well, especially if you were somebody who didn't normally have recurring dreams.
Yeah. And
then you go to some place that creeps you out where you have some weird experiences and then start having like...
That would be scary.
Yeah.
Okay, but generally speaking, when you get into bed, you're pretty quick to sleep.
Yeah, and it's so annoying now. I am quick to sleep, and then I get up to go to the bathroom, a couple times a night now. But I will say 99% of the time, I go right back to sleep.
And what's the annoying part?
Just getting up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I wonder sometimes if the fact that I dream is because I have a harder time falling asleep, and so
light sleeper.
So I let my brain. I just build out fantasies in my brain about like a life I might have lived over here. Or like, what if I did this? And just like let my mind explore like, what would happen if I ran into that old friend of mine, and just build out these like false worlds. And so I wonder if having a brain like that makes me more prone to dreaming, because now that's like the last thing my brain is thinking about.
Maybe.
Before.
I daydream a lot like that during the day.
I'm not a daytime daydreamer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My mind wanders all over the place if I let it, if I'm not thinking about just like, thinking it. And then sometimes I'll come up with stories or whatever. But it's a lot of times just random flights of fancy. That's every day.
Yeah.
But at night when I'm trying to go to bed, usually not. I feel like I've conditioned myself. Or maybe I'm just lucky. Maybe I haven't conditioned myself. But I when I go to bed, I generally don't lay there thinking about stuff. I just start to fall asleep.
No, it's so good. It's so good that you can do that. I wish that I could daydream during the day. My like version of that is that my brain just goes from like, oh shit, I need to do that, and it's like a neurospicy brain. It's like an ADD thing where it's like I start here and being able to multitask can be really great, but it also takes you out of the task.
Yeah,
and then it leads me to like a series of other things, and so. It's probably good that I don't daydream during the day, because I think I would get nothing done.
Okay.
I can't like stop it.
I feel like I can't turn it off. Like it's not a conscious thing. My mind just wanders.
Okay, well, listen, I love that we have different brains.
Yeah,
like what a beautiful thing.
You want to thank some Annabelles?
I sure do. I want to talk about neurospicy brains instead. Thank you to the following Annabelles for supporting us and what we do, and supporting Dan's new venture with Nightmare Fuel. So fun to see. Brass Clarkson. What a fucking great name. Quentin Leday, Alexis Sorensen, Simone Paben, Nikki Kirby, Jeremy Jenkins, Amberly and Jacob, Cole, and Chip Chrome. No way. Chip Chrome. I hope you work on cars. I really need you to work on cars.
Chip Chrome was like some I feel like a sci-fi movie, like a detective from like the year 2090
that's better than
or
what
something.
I've got.
I am Chip Chrome. I am here to protect you. I don't know, something. I am Officer Chrome. You can call me Chip. He's like a cyborg or something like, I don't know.
I was really into Brass Clarkson.
Okay.
You are a badass.
I'd like to thank the following Annabelles as well. Carrie Armstrong, Briar Tucker. Man, almost like, isn't it Bryce Harper? Never mind. I thought it was a baseball player. Yeah.
I thought you were thinking of Friar Tuck.
Briar Tucker. Ashley Christina Baldwin Sendagorta.
Oh, that's a lot of names.
Yeah, I got 2 middle names. Or actually, you know what? It reads to me like 1 middle name and then possibly 2 last names.
Name?
Yeah, just without the hyphen. Some people do that. Samantha Smith, Daniel, Colin Morgan, Starkweather Christina, Tony Shalada, Connor Hauk, and Brandy Wilmoth.
Well done. And I have the following spoopy shout-outs. To Blake from Scout and Ellie. Happy first Father's Day. You're an amazing dad, and we love our weekend BattleBots binges with you.
Funny. BattleBots.
To Reggie's dad from Reggie. I hope you're pain-free wherever you are. Mom, Bobby, and I miss you very much. I wish we'd been closer, but I'll settle for the memories. Also, please don't haunt us. To Daniel from Elizabeth and Declan. Also, happy first Father's Day. We love you so much and appreciate all that you do for us. You're an amazing dad. To Ty from Brian. Happy 10th anniversary of turning 26. I hope you had a great birthday. I love you 3000.
Cute.
To Jacob Shark from your good wife who just needs to submit. Happy birthday. Thank you for being my anchor, for loving and choosing me every day. I love you so much. To Priscilla from John. Happy 25th anniversary. These are the folks that sent us our crazy water.
Nice.
Yes, I believe that they're the first person to ever gift me Florida water, which it might be out now. I don't have it around the studio anymore, so I might have used it all.
Funny.
But they're such a cool couple. We met them in Austin. They came to summer camp and just good people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
just really touched my heart. And happy Father's Day to you.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah, me and the kids and the dogs think you're like a really good dad.
Oh, thanks.
You're a good human dad and a good fur dad. And a good podcast dad too, I guess.
Oh, well, thank you.
You got a lot of kids.
That submit reference, just for anybody confused.
That could be really weird out of context.
Yeah,
Sorry.
That is from Timesuck, and just a running gag about like this trying to get Lynze to submit after talking about all these patriarchal cults. And somebody sent us a book. Logan put it on my desk.
Oh my God, yes.
I think it's called How to Get Your Wife to Submit.
Yeah,
but it's not a joke.
No, it's a real book.
Like it's like hey man, if you're having problems, you know.
How to become a submissive
Oh
wife.
Yeah.
Even better for me.
Yeah. You do the work. You read it.
Yeah, come on, wife.
Learn how to submit. Okay, so that's our show. Thanks for continuing to send in your personal tales of terror to mystory@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. You can email us for everything else at info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. Thank you to Logan Keith, editing, publishing today's show, scoring it as well. Thanks to Heather Rylander, organizing the My Story emails. Book editor Drew Atana for getting all those stories ready for our 5th book that's going to be here soon.
Soon.
I found the first story I shared today, and big thanks to our son Kyler Cummins.
Woo woo!
Finding that second story, the Bergen story.
Good job, Bub Grub.
He loves Bergen Norway. And that's a legend I looked into. I'm like, holy cow, I didn't know there's such a dark legend from Bergen.
Yeah, because it just does not lend itself. You wouldn't think that.
Yeah. Kyler is home from college for summer break. He's been doing, great at research papers for school. And so we gave him a shot at one Scared to Death story, this one. And he did a great job.
But if you guys hate it, let us know. He needs constructive criticism from people that are not his parents.
No, but he did
great.
Yeah. And even on that story, I will say too, it's like, just so people know, like when I say like, hey, so-and-so found the story, I generally also tweak it to fit my voice.
Of course.
So it could have been me if there was something he didn't like.
Probably Kyler though.
But we're really proud of him. He's going to be working doing some scripts for Timesuck too. I'm excited. I haven't read the first Short Suck script, but he's done 2 now for Scared to Death, and they're both great.
Yeah, no, it's really fun.
Work out.
What a special thing to be able to
totally
work with your kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's way better than having him do Is We Dumb emails.
Oh my gosh, I still feel.
I think
we
ruined him a little bit.
We're on YouTube if you want to watch a show. On Facebook and Instagram, where we post pics and accompany episodes and more. You can just go to @ScaredToDeath Podcast. We have a private Facebook group, Creeps and Peepers, full of fellow horror lovers. Big thing. Oh, by the way, I want to start watching this show called Evil. I have now heard from multiple people that it is amazing.
Oh yeah,
just
Alvin
one
was
word,
just talking about it.
Evil. Yeah.
Maybe I'll watch it with you.
Okay, I'd love for you to watch a horror movie or horror series.
Is it super scary?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. That's why I want to watch it. Big thanks to the All-Seeing Eyes, the Creeps and Peepers moderators. You are fantastic. And enjoy your nightmares, Creeps and Peepers. Hope you were scared to death.
Bye.
If spirits threaten me in this place, fight water by water and fire by fire. Banish their souls into nothingness and remove their powers until the last trace. Let these evil beings flee through time and space. Evil may pass through, but hath no home here within, scared to death.
Bad Magic Productions.
Oh, so good. I want ice cream real bad right now.